Hello and welcome to a new edition of EUPRERA Talks. My name is Wim Elving. I'm Professor of Sustainable Communication at Hanze University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, and I'm also a board member of EUPRERA. For those of you joining us for the first time, let me introduce us. EUPRERA is the European Public Relations Education and Research Association, currently with more than 550 members in over 50 countries. Our members are academics and professionals primarily from Europe, but our membership expands even beyond the continent. EUPRERA's focus is on fostering a community passionate about research and education in public relations and strategic communication. We do that primarily through our thematic networks and projects, as well as during our annual congress and related activities. This year, the congress will take place in Lund in Sweden from September 24 to 27. You will find more information on this on the EUPRERA website and through our social media channels. Today, we have the Prague conference book called Responsibility in Strategic Communication, Truth or Trap as central theme with several authors of chapters, including Ganga Dhanesh, University of Maryland, Samira Rahimi Mavi, University of Vienna, Denisa Hejlová from the Charles University in Prague, and also myself. The moderator role will be done by Petra Koudelková, also from Charles University. So it's my pleasure to give the floor to Petra for today's EUPRERA talks. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to check out some of the other talks. Petra, the mic is yours.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Wim, thank you very much for your introduction. So my name is Petra Koudelková, and I will be taking you through today's webinar. As you heard, we are going to speak about the book with the title Responsibility in Strategic Communication, True or Trap. This book deals with very timely topics, and those are sustainability and responsibility. Since the book is a collection of interesting and high quality essays from different authors from different countries, these topics are looked at from different communication perspectives, but not only communication, of course. I had the honor of being the editor of this book together with my colleagues Hanna Moravcová, Denisa Hejlová, Stefania Romenti, and Chiara Valentini, and I am happy that we can present it to you here today. In this book, you can find a total of 10 chapters, plus an introduction by Stefania Romenti. Some of these chapters are more practical. For example, the chapter CEO Activism in Portugal by Alexander Duarte and Patricia Diaz, or chapter with the title Hijacking as a Government Social Responsibility Action by Camelia Kmesiu, Anka Anton, and Eugen Glavan, while others are written from a more theoretical point of view and encourage readers to reflect on the situation as a whole. This perspective is offered, for example, in the chapter based on a literature review entitled Is It All Fake? The Rhetoric in CSR and Sustainability Communication by Giuseppe Bonaccorso, or chapter by Rumtiti Yared, Corporate Social Responsibility Skepticism as a multi-dimensional construct, a scoping literature review. Chapter Artificial Intelligence, Ethical Violence and Corporate Response Strategies by Stefania Romenti, Elano Coleoni, Grazia Murtarelli, and Camilla Moroni takes a closer look at the responsibility use of artificial intelligence in business and the reputational issues involved. And the chapter by Nilüfer Gacy is built on the foundation of stakeholder theory. This chapter serves a dual purpose. Firstly, it seeks to examine to trends and engagement strategies employed by organizations in the realm of SDGs. Additionally, it aspires to offer guidance and recommendation for corporation aiming to enhance their SDGs themed strategy communication efforts through insightful and creative interactions. And now I am happy I can introduce you our four special guests, four authors. And our first speaker is Ganga Dhanesh. She is an associate professor at the Department of Communication, University of Maryland. Ganga focuses on CSR and strategic communication. She has won multiple research awards, and the recent bibliometrical analysis placed her among the top two most productive scholars on CSR within public relations research. She also was our keynote speaker at the EUPRERA conference held in Prague in 2023. And she will introduce her chapter about the public relation with the title Public Relations and Responsibility, Public Relations in Polarized Times. I think her chapter is very interesting because it emphasizes the importance of pragmatic PR approach. Our second speaker is Samira Rahimi Mavi. She received her doctoral degree in communication from the University of Vienna in Austria. Her research centers on media representation of halal in Western context, external corporate communication on controversial issues, CSR, diversity and inclusion, and consumer skepticism. Her chapter was written in collaboration with Sabine Einwil and is entitled Communicating about Controversial Issues, the case of halal offering in the food retail and banking sectors in Germany and Austria. So it is very close to Samira's thesis topic. Next speaker is Denisa Hejlová. Denisa is a member at the Department of Marketing, Communication and PR at the Faculty of Social Sciences at Charles University in Prague. Currently, she is a director of Center for Strategic Communication at this faculty. She conducts research, teaches, and consults in the areas of strategic communication, public relations, public affairs, and political communication. Denisa can introduce her chapter entitled The Evolution and Controversy of ESG, Communicating Responsibility or Responsible Communication. And finally, our fourth speaker is Wim Elving. Wim is a professor of sustainable communication at the Hans University of Applied Science in Groningen, Netherlands. His research expertise is besides sustainable communication, corporate communication, internal and change communication, also CSR communication and branding. So now you know our guests, our speakers, and Ganga, is your turn.
Thank you, Petra, for that really nice introduction, and to Wim for welcoming everyone to this webinar. So as Petra mentioned, I had delivered this as a keynote for the 2023 EUPRERA. And in the keynote and this chapter, I kind of raised some open-ended questions on the intersections between public relations and responsibility, particularly highlighting increasing complexities in PR's role in helping businesses to articulate their voice in society in increasingly polarized times. Okay, so the fundamental question that I raise here is, should companies engage in CSA or corporate social advocacy in polarized times? And how does public relations fit into this picture? While it can be about both responsible communication and communicating responsibility, in this chapter, I focus on its role in communicating responsibility. Now, historically, it has always been very complex to communicate responsibility, starting off with inherent tensions in the notion of CSR itself. as well as dualistic portrayal by media, usually as the bad guys. Companies are not any better. The different kinds of washings that they engage in, and the results in corporate accusations of corporate hypocrisy based on audience skepticism, the gap between storytelling and story doing, and more recently, the rise of stakeholder activism. Now, as a result of all of these, you find that companies have been stepping beyond traditional remits of what we call corporate social responsibility to engaging in more controversial issues under the guise of corporate social advocacy. Controversial issues that might cause a backlash from polarized audiences. And we know some of these examples very well. Now, how can public relations as a boundary spanning function help organizations and public stay in sync when there is so much of antagonistic and supportive forces? Now, research says there are two main approaches, the instrumental functionalist approach and the co-creational constitutive approach. Now, as we are familiar, in the functionalist approach, the idea is that organizations engage in persuasive CSR communication to generate positive organizational outcomes, such as better reputation or relationships. In the co-creational approach, the ideas of dissensus and agonistic pluralism have been proposed, which generally means that organizations create these pluralistic spaces where they foster very different, divergent, heteroglossic viewpoints, perspectives, and ideologies. And whether applying this notion of agonistic public relations to sustainability, said public relations role is to create this conversational contestation. While I agree that both the functionalist and the co-creational approach are very useful, sometimes you find when organizations are faced with both supporters and detractors in extremely equal or strong forces. So there are fans and friends, there are foes and critics. I argue that a more productive approach might come from the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. Now, I had done this in 2023, and then I developed it into a paper which just got published. So that has more things around recommendations and things like that. So here is where I first talk about Stoicism. And I wondered, things have been changing dramatically in the recent past. But then I thought a philosophy that was generated in deeply turbulent context of 2000 years ago should stand us in good stead even today. So the main idea in Stoicism is that people need to exercise the four cardinal virtues of self-control or temperance, courage, justice, and wisdom. It is our perceptions of things that cause trouble and not the actual happening itself. And the third idea is that we can't control anything beyond our own recent choice. Now, I looked into Stoicism and pulled out a few ideas which I thought would really be helpful for communicating responsibility. So the first one is on identity. So this is where Stoics ask, what are you supposed to be? Like, who are you, right? So what's your vocation? It's to be a good person. So later on, I draw parallels to the morally good organization. Who are you? You aim to be, you aspire to be a morally good organization. So whatever anyone does or says, for my part, I am bound to the good. Whatever anyone does or says, I must be what I am and show my true colors. And this kind of parallels very well with the idea of organizational identity, which is usually reflected in things like mission statements, vision statements, purpose statements that articulate what or who an organization is. Stoicism also refers to the notion of mutual interdependence, right? That which isn't good for the hive isn't good for the bee. And within the notion of CSR, which kind of connects the dots between business, society, and civil society and government. It reminds us of our interdependence and interconnections. Another thought I pull on is the idea of circles of control. The idea that you can only focus on what is within your circle of control, and you really cannot do anything much about what's not within your circle of control. So the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control. So applying this to organizations, I talk about what are the factors under an organization's control when it comes to talking about responsibilities. It could be making sure that the cost that you're engaging with is very closely aligned with what you say you are and your values. So alignment with your identity is important. Listening to your employees, being aligned with the CEO's ideology. I mean, to whatever extent the CEO is under an organization circle of control, or even employees are within a circle of control. Brand courage, brand's moral authority would all probably lie within their relative circle of control. Whereas external audience, opinions, points of view, resistances are clearly outside of the organization's control. And then, so depending on your identity, depending on your circle of controls, if you decide to engage in corporate social advocacy, if you face obstacles, how do you deal with it? So this thought says, as you move forward along the path of reason, people will stand in your way. They will never be able to keep you from doing what's sound, so don't let them knock out your goodwill for them. Keep a steady watch on both fronts, not only for well-based judgments and actions, but also for gentleness with those who would obstruct our path or create other difficulties. So obstacles are going to happen, but it's something we have to be ready for. I like the last sentence, which says, forgetting angry is also a weakness, just as much as abandoning the task or surrendering under panic. And we have seen so many examples of companies recently abandoning the task or surrendering under panic. Instead, Stoicism suggests that you either stay the course or you change course. But how do you stay the course? How do you decide when to stay the course? This is a bit small in terms of font. I'll read it around. Life without a design is erratic. As soon as one is in place, principles become necessary. I think you will concede that nothing is more shameful than uncertain and wavering conduct, and beating a cowardly retreat, again, reminds us of a few recent examples. Now, this will happen in all our affairs unless we remove the faults that seize and detain our spirits, preventing them from pushing forward and making an all-out effort. So the idea is that you need to have a plan in place and you need to be committed to that. What is the cause of this back and forth? It's because nothing is clear and they rely on the most uncertain guide, common opinion. So if companies start shifting their stances based on what Stoicism calls common opinion, you will just keep moving back and forth, and that isn't exactly a great idea. But that doesn't mean just because you have plans and you have decided this is how I'm going to go, I'm not going to be swayed by public opinion, doesn't mean you cannot change course. So you can change course, but according to your own recent choice. So you listen to feedback, but keeping with your impulse and judgment, and yes, with your intelligence. So you take in feedback, you look at what's within your circle of control, and then you decide through your recent choice whether you want to change course or not. And finally, the importance of reflection. All of this can be done only through deep reflection and reflective practice. I'll keep constant watch over myself. I will put each day up for review. The idea is that all of this cannot be done in a very impulsive fashion. You need to be reflexive about how, first, whether to engage in CSA, two, if you do and you face obstacles, how are you going to deal with that? So that, I think, is my 7 minutes or slightly more. Thank you so much. That's how I pull on stoicism to suggest an alternative way to help organizations articulate their voice and responsible voice in society. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. And thank you to the editors and organizers for bringing this publication to life. I'm Samira Rahimi Mavi, and that's the title of chapter, Communicating About Controversial Issues, the case of halal offerings in the food, retail, and banking sectors in Germany and Austria, by me and Sabina Einwiller. Well, our chapter begins by highlighting a dilemma in CSR practices of companies. While engaging in CSR helps build moral legitimacy, offering controversial products such as halal can expose companies to backlash and risk that legitimacy. Well, in this situation, companies cut between including Muslim stakeholders through halal offerings while managing differing expectations from non-Muslim stakeholders. In such a value-based conflict, it is important to build moral legitimacy, because building moral legitimacy is this decisive role, source of societal acceptance. And research suggests that to build moral legitimacy, ethical communication is an effective strategy. Ethical communication is a discursive approach based on transparency, accountability, open discourse, and participation that provide means for companies to engage in conversation with their stakeholders. In fact, that create alignment between companies' values and stakeholders' expectations and societal norms that elicit positive outcomes. Building on this context, the objective of our chapter is providing normative evaluation of companies' web-based CSR communication on halal products and services. And by normative evaluation, we go beyond companies' economic objectives for halal offerings, and we mostly focus on their positive contribution to the society. So we ask the question, how do companies from food, retail, and banking sectors in Austria and Germany publicly communicate with its external stakeholders about their halal products offerings in terms of transparency, accountability, open discourse, and participation? And to answer this question, we did a content analysis of 61 large mainstream companies, drawing on publicly available data from companies' website, online shops, Facebook pages, and CSR reports. To measure each ethical principle, we identified indicators grounded in theory. For example, to assess transparency, we looked for accessibility of information and efficiency of information regarding halal products and services. And to assess accountability, we examined companies' disclosure of moral values and their CSR initiatives, like programs for refugee integrations and cultural diversity. And to qualify open discourse and participations, we looked for companies' engagement with non-business stakeholders concerning refugee integration and their engagement with consumers on Facebook concerning halal offerings. Here are some key findings of our research. Well, out of 61 companies we analyzed, only 18% publicly communicate about offering halal products. That means the communication about halal is little. And the term halal is often hard to access and requires prior knowledge of specific halal brand. And the available information lacked necessary information regarding practical operations like supply chain and certifications. Interestingly, the Bank Babak renamed its halal account from Amana to Budget to mitigate the controversy. And some companies like Spar pursued integration initiatives independently, while others like Reve and Edeka collaborate with non-business stakeholders. And companies' communication participation on Facebook is nearly absent, and communication is mostly monologic and rarely dialogic. There are also some interesting insights from in our chapter we can learn. For example, companies are cautious communicators when it comes to sensitive topics like halal. And to avoid negative sentiment, companies often limit access to information. And by applying this approach, they may avoid public backlash, but they also risk undermining the moral legitimacy and stakeholders' trust. One important insight is that all companies indicate a general commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, what distinguishes companies is the disclosure of cultural diversity and awareness of integration as a broader societal issue. And the last insight, and maybe the most important insight, is although companies can independently engage in CSR initiatives, those that collaborate with non-business stakeholders have more successfully continued their halal offerings. Here we have also some suggestions for practice. The question whether dialogue should take place on social media, where polarization and harmful speech are prevalent, is arguable. This raises the question, well, for future research. And another takeaway is that supporting the Muslim community through offering products and working with non-business stakeholders to promote diversity and inclusion is a key, but also communication is very important. And our research comes with some limitations. The most important limitation is the content analysis revealed communication patterns, but couldn't fully capture ethical communication. So future research should include interviews with companies, CSR and communication manager for deeper insight. Thank you for listening.
Sorry, Carrie, can you hear me now? Is it better? So I would like to introduce you my chapter, and it was written a while ago, and I focused on why ESG is such a controversial term. So whereas in most of the countries globally, ESG is considered something voluntarily that the corporations do based on their free will, basically. In European Union, we do have a number of laws and directives that specify what companies should and shouldn't do and how they should report their stance toward environmental, social, and governance. So why is ESG controversial? There is an ESG paradox. Despite that, the companies might have some good intentions. Sometimes they lead towards what I call corporate hypocrisy. So initially, there is a mismatch between the talking and the walking. So sometimes your intentions are good, but you are somehow not able to deliver your goals. So some of the climate goals, for example, are too ambitious. And even the companies, even though that they propose them, they already know that they will never be able to fulfill them. Or they have to do something else to fulfill them, which has some negative side effects too. So it's quite difficult to make the right decisions when you are especially a multinational or global company, because what is good for one person may not always be good for somebody else. So let's talk about the ESG concept a little bit. The key figure in ESG actually is an investment banker called Larry Fink and his investment group, BlackRock. It is the largest investment groups, and he has advocated personally for what he calls conscious capitalism. And he claims that corporations should act as moral actors. However, even Larry Fink found out that it's quite difficult in a globalized world to define what actually is moral. Because what is moral in one culture is not moral in the second culture. So he decided about 2 years ago to abandon the term ESG, and he said it's politically weaponized, either from the left or from the right. The question I raise is, can ESG be non-political? My claim is that ESG is always inherently political. Moreover, it is geopolitical. So you have to bear in mind where you stand, what are your values, and what are the ideas that you believe in and that you present. In my chapter, I present 3 case studies that expose those big ESG dilemmas. The first one comes from tobacco industry. Of course, tobacco industry has been tainted for many years and has suffered the consequences of their actions. However, recently, they are trying to persuade the publics that they are willing to persuade the people to stop smoking because, of course, it's bad for your health. But the truth is, do they really want to give up the smokers or not? Or do they want to create new customers for new products? So I claim that the harm reduction approach that the tobacco companies propose is actually a way to promote their new type of products, usually heated tobacco products or oral nicotine products, because nicotine is highly addictive. And therefore, nicotine products are kind of an ideal product, because once a customer gets hooked to them, it stays loyal. So the second example I have is even more difficult than the tobacco industry. It is the defense industry. And again, we are talking about people dying. So unfortunately, this is a very heavy topic, and obviously everybody would love to live in the world where weapons do not exist and people do not kill people. However, that is not realistic. So we're talking about who should fund the defense industry, because for some reasons, the defense industry has been negatively screened from investment funds, including, for example, the European investment banks, because it is obviously not environmental friendly industry. It involves a lot of non-environmental friendly things. So I ask a question whether actually the non-financing of the defense industry can have a negative side effect, and that is actually that due to the lack of defense, people are dying, so that it affects maybe less the environmental side, but more the social side. And the third case study I have is from the fashion industry. Fashion may be elegant, may be beautiful, but it also covers up some quite stinky things. So the fashion industry is an industry that in their corporate communication always enhances a lot of environmental stance, such as recycled fabrics or less water consumption or promoting reusing and taking care of your clothes, etc. However, they hold also is what I call strategic silence on dead stock and overproduction, basically on the things that they cannot sell. So again, we're in European Union, we are implementing some new laws, but my question is whether these new laws that actually forbid selling or disposing the overproduction will lead to some environmental solutions. So my key insights, just to sum up, are that ESG goals can backfire and they can be used manipulatively. So the ESG is it's necessary to align your walks and talks, the aligned actions and transparency. And my questions for the audience will be if they think that the new ESG directives and norms will make our world better or will help to cover up the corporate hypocrisy. Thank you.
Well, thank you, speakers Denisa, Ganga, Samira. Very interesting, and I need to wrap it up, and probably I will repeat some stuff you already told. My contribution to this wonderful book is Complexities, Challenges and Opportunities in Digital and Regulated World. Yeah, well, Denisa already talked about ESGs, the SDGs were mentioned, the due diligence, the European CSR directive, and dealing with some other important issues as well. And disinformation, legal actions are putting pressure on CSR, but also CSR gives many opportunities, and I'd like to take you in the opportunities CSR can have. So if you look at companies, organizations, I think there's still a dominance of the shareholder value instead of the stakeholder value. And if you look at recent publications, including the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, well, these are mainly used for some cherry picking, and as we saw with CSR as well, identity washing. Well, Ganga had a really nice slide on this as well. The various colors used for all kinds of identity washing. If you look at what's happening, we have in the Netherlands, we had this Urgenda case there, an Urgenda, that's a couple of people who took legal action to our government, that the government promised in the Paris Treaty, but also other treaties, promised to take serious climate action, but actually did not do anything. Recently, the city of The Hague had an advertising ban on fossil advertisement, for instance, for flying or other stuff. And there was this Swiss case of elderly people more or less doing the same as the Urgenda case in the Netherlands, forcing the government to really take action instead of using well, these as more PR. So misleading faces legal repercussions in these times. well, we talked about the CSR directive, and it's become milder for organizations. Legal experts warn of serious weakening and the European Green Deal. So there's really something going on, and it's all with the dominance of the war, the geopolitical issues, rising gas prices that forces, or maybe it weakens politicians to step up and really take action. In CSR or ESG or purpose, what is the main reason for existing of your company? It really does attract and retain talent. We saw in our own research that a company that's active on engaging employees in its CSR, ESG is really seen as more attractive than organizations who fail to do that. And these are not the famous experiments with students. These are real employees in real organizations. And employer branding, and so your external attractiveness starts really inside. If you're doing the right things, if you're having an active CSR program that includes employees, and employees have been alongside in thinking about that, that really makes that your company is more attractive also for the outside world. And yeah, well, recent scandals is shown organizations need to regain trust. So how to do that? Well, first of all, build your own newsroom. Let employees tell their stories and share these, and invest in internal communications to turn employees into ambassadors. In many organizations, there are limited budgets on internal communication and extended budgets for marketing communications. I wouldn't say that they should be turned around, but internal communication really needs more investment, and in general, organizations invest in them right now. Yeah, to conclude, CSR is a strategic imperative. It's more than the PR thing. Many thought of 25 years ago. It requires measurable action and stakeholder trust, and as we always summarize it, start inside and win outside. That was my contribution, and I was very privileged to be part of the authors of this book and of this webinar, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. As you can see, the chapters are interesting and offer a wide variety of topics, so every reader can find something they like. At this point, if you have any questions or comments, please write them in the comments, as you can see. And in the meantime, I will ask, for example, Denisa, your topic ESG is highly relevant in these days. How would you describe the attitude of Czech companies towards ESG?
Hello, thank you for this question. As I said, in the European Union, because we are a member state of the European Union, we fall under the European directives. However, the European Union has loosened to a large extent the proposed ESG measures, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. According to our research, what we have done in our master degree study was that in the Czech Republic, the small and medium-sized enterprises, they were not aware of the ESG measures at all. They didn't know how to handle it, and they had no idea of what the non-financial reporting should look like, what they should disclose or not disclose. Moreover, they were worried that the information that they will disclose could be misused, for example, by other companies or by some other actors in the field. So the situation in the Czech Republic is also valid for a lot of member states. The Czech Republic has officially welcomed the Green Deal and all the measures, but the public opinion is more strongly against it because of the economy, of course, but also because of the geopolitical stance. So contrary to Germany, the Czech Republic stand, for example, to nuclear energy or towards the energetic sector is very much different. And so are a lot of other issues, including the social and cultural issues, which are very different, for example, from Austria.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much, Denisa. Okay, we have here some comments, but any questions? So maybe maybe Wim, you seem to be an expert on news in CSRD and legal information. So, what do you think of the European Commission's plan to limit CSRD requirements? Do you have any
Yeah,
opinion?
that's always this fake process of lobbying and companies and the automobile factories in Germany. It's hidden for us, and it's sometimes frustrating. On the other hand, it's better to have a solid supported measure than an unsupported one. It's not good that it's loosened, and at least in my country, but in many countries you see, well, all these rules and regulations, and we cannot stand it anymore unless till the fact then when you're confronted with a rule or regulation that's not being followed by an organization. So we need to keep on trying. In the end, it will be forced, and maybe it takes some more time. But yeah, well, don't lose hope.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have here a question for Ganga. Rauka Moise asked you, the main critics brought the Stoic philosophers was their disregard for emotions. How do you interpret the rise of emotionality in public's attitudes?
Thank you so much, Raluca. That's a fantastic question. Actually, someone raised it at a recent presentation I had made at the IPR Bridge conference. I think that's the whole idea here, right? That yes, there is rise of emotions, and that's why all this it's becoming really vitriolic. But while you take that into consideration, what would be a stoic response from the organization side? So you're not going to sway according to emotions. You take emotions into consideration, but the idea is that you as an organization make a recent choice, right? Based on what's within your circle of control. Can you control these emotions or swaying public opinion? You can't. But you can control what you are going to do about it. You can control the extent of moral courage that you want to exhibit, right? You can exercise your moral authority as an organizational actor. You can engage with your stakeholders and then decide what your course of action needs to be. So the stoic response needs to be recent out. And I think that's really valid from an organizational point of view. That's not to say that we disregard, because, well, that's completely out of your control. You do regard it, but then your response is going to be more based on a rational, recent approach. I hope that addresses the question.
Okay, thank you very much. Next comment and question for Denisa from Raluca Moisa. Totally agree that the ESG is inherently political. In your opinion, how do ESG claims fare with different types of publics and stakeholders?
Yeah, thank you very much, so much, Raluca, for this intriguing question. It's really difficult to answer this one. My point would be more like ideological and would be coming very close to what Ganga has said previously. So a lot of the corporations, they think they need to be here for everybody. I think it's behind it is the idea of melting pot coming from the United States, that you have to serve all kinds of stakeholders there are. And of course, some stakeholders are more vocal about their rights and about their expectations than others. My point would be that in today's world, we are strongly heading towards the deglobalization. And since I have studied 1 year in Japan, intercultural communication, my personal belief is that the communication within the cultures is not the same. We have to build bridges between the cultures. I do not believe in multiculturalism as in Angela Merkel's sense, and she has also said her famous quote, "Multiculturalism has failed." So I think that the corporations should acknowledge who their stakeholders are, what their values are, and keep them, and be open and transparent about them. And don't be afraid if you cannot serve everybody, basically.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And here's one question that anyone can respond to, I guess. Given the growing skepticism around CSR and ESG initiatives, what strategies, in your opinion, can companies use to effectively address or counter these perceptions? So,
Shall I give it a try? It's a very good question, Nesla. I think they should stick to their plans, and I think the skepticism isn't that much among the public. It is among opinion leaders, influencers, governments, and look at the diversity and inclusion pause that's going on from the United States. Of course, you want to have a diverse and inclusive culture in your organization. If you're serving the world, and the world is diverse, and there's a need for inclusion. So please stick to your plan. Don't get frustrated by these skepticism, and go ahead. What's good for you, for your employees, and for the world would be my comment.
okay, thank you very much. Another one wants to comment.
Yeah, I would completely support what Wim said, that companies really need to stick to what they truly believe in. In the first place, if you don't believe in any of this, don't do it. Because it is when Denisa said the gap between the talk and the walk happens, and also in Samira's presentation, that all the skepticism gets triggered and companies are accused of hypocrisy. But if you truly believe in this, I liked what Will said, if the world is diverse and you are serving the world, well, you better be open to diversity, right? So if you truly believe in what you're doing, you should stick to it in spite of whatever upsets might come in what I'm calling circles of control that are beyond you, right? So you completely focus on what you can control and stick to what you believe in. Sorry, Samira, I think you were about to say something. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think it is also interesting to know that how will European companies that operating in USA will react to these emerging policies and new policies, because in one hand they have to comply with the new regulations, on the other hand they comply with EU regulations with regard to diversity standards. And I have no definite answer for that, but I guess they will find some diplomatic practices to resolve this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe last question for Samira, because Samira, you have quite a specific topic. So maybe do you think that the situation about halal food is the same or is different in other countries? Like, I don't know if you compare, for example, southern and northern countries, or east or west, or something like that.
Thanks for the question. Yes, that's a great question. Actually, the situation depends on the policies in different countries. The thing is that EU has granted all European member states to recognize the right of ethnic religious minorities to have their own religious food. But different countries, they follow their own national and domestic regulations. But again, it depends on the political situation in each country. That's really important. It's kind of also socio-political thing. For example, in countries where populists and right wings have more power, so they can influence the society more. So the situation is not really good. There are more criticisms regarding halal offerings, but in countries like Austria, that Islam has a unique position. I think there is kind of a balanced strategy how the companies try to manage it, but still companies are very cautious about how to address halal offerings. And that's a problem because many consumers have no idea what are halal products. And in my opinion, if they try to increase the awareness that these products comply with national regulations, is much better than trying to show an act of censorship and undermine the transparency. That caused, I think, more problems.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. So I think our time is up. Thank you to our guests and everyone who watched our webinar for your time. Thank you for your comments and questions. And okay, and that's it. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.